Shalom. So, what is a rabbi anyway? The concept of a rabbi in Jewish life is very, very important. And essentially, the rabbi is a link in a chain that goes back all the way to Mount Sinai. Because essentially, what the rabbi is really invested with and what he is supposed to represent, if he is worth anything and if he's doing a good job, he is expressing the authority of Mount Sinai in that continuum. And when the Jew, for example, comes to his rabbi with a question, what he really needs to know is he needs to know what is Hashem's will for me in this particular situation. Now, the rabbi is representing a succession. He's representing the tradition that was passed down from the time of Moshe, and he's representing the authority of being able to answer authoritatively what Hashem desires in any given situation. He doesn't necessarily have all the answers. He doesn't necessarily know everything, but based on his knowledge and based on his experience, he has to be able to draw a conclusion for the benefit of his people. And at least he knows where to look and how to derive that answer. And this places the questioner in a very unique situation, because he knows that he's done his best to receive instruction of how best to fulfill Hashem's will. So the rabbi is not about a holy man, not about a wonder worker, not about someone who's going to just give a blessing. It's really about taking the Torah and plugging it into any situation so that we know what our proper code of behavior at any given point in time should be. Now, in Jewish family life and in Jewish communal life, this is extremely important because we weren't given a manual when we were born. That's the old joke, but actually we were, because the Torah is the manual. And the rabbi has the ability, hopefully, to be able to discern, sometimes with a very fine line, what the situation calls for. And so this is not something that can be bought. This is not something that necessarily represents only a degree. This is something that represents the ability of this person to really be able to become a vessel for Hashem to use, to be able to bring about a proper rendering of what his will would be. And above all, the rabbi should be helping and not hindering. And that's a very, very important idea, because really, he's supposed to be making life easier and not more difficult. I'll give you an example. You know, in the old days in Europe, before things were more mechanized, a woman would buy a chicken and bring it to the ritual slaughterer and have it prepared for the Sabbath. And this was done on a very simple one-on-one level of need. It wasn't about going into a large store and buying a prepackaged frozen chicken. Now, many times we have this motif throughout history. A question might arise about something that was perceived in the chicken after it was slaughtered. And these laws are very complicated. Is it kosher? Isn't it kosher? So the woman would bring the chicken to her rabbi. Now the rabbi might say to one lady, don't eat the chicken. And to another woman with the same problem, he might say, it's okay. Now, how could that be? There aren't two different Torahs, and it might have been the same problem. It's because these laws are very, very complex, and he has to be able to access everything in a microsecond. He has to be able to access the entire database. So this is before the days of a flash drive or a CD. And he has to know that there are different circumstances and opinions, but there are so many opinions. He has to know, well, under certain circumstances there could be a leniency, something could be relied upon. It's not maybe the best situation, so he knows his people. He knows his congregants, and he knows this particular woman is very, very poor. And for her to buy another chicken would be very, very difficult. She won't be able to. And so he knows, you know what? It's not the best thing in the world, and if someone could afford it, they really shouldn't eat that chicken, but it's okay, because it's not really not kosher, it's just that it's would have been better not to, but now to another woman who is in a different situation altogether and could afford to buy another chicken, he would say, it's better for you not to eat that. Now that's a rabbi, because he's caring about the person. I'll give you a better example. There's a really famous story. His name was Rabbi Chaim of Brisk. A woman came to him with a question in Jewish law, an interesting question. She said, Rabbi, am I permitted to use milk for the 4 cups of wine on Passover nights? Because we have the Passover Seder, and one of the central components of the Passover Seder is that we drink 4 cups of wine that correspond to the 4 expressions of redemption in the book of Exodus. And this is a very, very important idea, 4 cups of wine. And so she came and she said, could I use milk for the 4 cups of wine? So he said, just a minute. He went into his room, he came out and he gave her 300 rubles. And he said, go and buy yourself everything that you need for Passover. When the woman left, Rabbi Chaim's wife said to him, since when are we social services? She came to you with a question and you give her money? And he said, don't you know? If she's asking if she can use milk for the 4 cups, it means that she doesn't have anything else in the house either. That is a rabbi. Now, does everyone need a rabbi? Do the non-Jews who are seeking to follow the ways of the Torah and to attach themselves to the God of Israel, do they also need a rabbi? I would say yes. And it's specifically an important issue because there are so many different ramifications and fine nuances and gradations in the understanding of how the 7 Noahide laws are applied today in every situation, and also the broader concept of how the Torah in general, the spirit of the Torah and the observance of the commandments can be applied in the non-Jewish world. And you will find that there are many different rabbis and many different opinions. And sometimes they can even appear to be contradictory. And this can be very, very confusing. And it is in the Jewish world as well. And so it's important to remember the dictum of our sages in the chapters of the Fathers, where they teach us, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a teacher. And the reason that this is so important is because of another injunction of the Torah, which tells us that you should live by the commandments. When God gave us the Torah, it was for us to live by, not to be frustrated by, not to be confused by, and certainly not to die by, but only to be positive, to live a joyous life. And so it's important to have a direction, to have one particular teacher that you can turn to and go to, who understands your situation, who will deal with you with knowledge and also compassion, who will understand the fine nuances of your particular complex, challenging situation, and be able to give you with authority in the voice of the Torah, as it were, in the voice of Hashem's will, how best to apply the Torah to every situation. And this can be a very, very personal thing. And the idea of having a rabbi means that you have someone that you are able to consult with, to study with, to ask of, to know how best to serve Hashem in this world.